All right, welcome to Bonehead Weekly. I almost said fun size, but that's an entirely different show. Today's topic, gentlemen, is
I'm not going to do it because as soon as I do it, somebody's going to pull the line.
What Their castle.
Exactly.
I thought you wanted to talk this way, Chad.
Can we just get it out of the way at the top?
I'm doing it now.
If we don't agree, every one of us is going to do it 100 times in the next hour.
Their castle. Young Frankenstein. Mick Strawn's favorite comedy.
And can we just break down that scene and how little sense it actually makes?
No, because
Frankenstein doesn't believe in monsters. He had this whole thing about you can't reanimate life. So do you think somebody who wouldn't believe in reanimating a dead corpse would believe in werewolves? It makes no sense. He just comes out of nowhere.
No, I disagree.
No, I think you're out of your mind, Chad. I think you need to be put in an asylum.
I'm just doing this because I want Mick to start yelling at us in the car while he's listening.
Well, no, if we want to start yelling at him, man, the producers is so much better than Young Frankenstein. Have you ever seen Blazing Saddles?
Don't get me started on Silent Movie.
You really piss him off. You go, life stinks. Mel Brooks, master.
Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, man. Not Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Never mind. I've screwed this joke up.
That's okay. So, hi, Mick. Anyway, we're talking about werewolves. Now, we've discussed werewolves, but we've never dedicated the whole show to werewolves.
Which I think is a crime.
Werewolf, their castle. God damn it, Chad. I can't not do it.
James, you've mentioned this before, but can you explain? Because I'm going to be completely honest with you. Out of all the monsters, werewolves are my least favorite, but they're your favorite.
Werewolves are my absolute favorite. Yeah.
I don't understand. Hold on. And it's probably a cross between the Mummy and werewolves. Actually, Mummy may be the least favorite, but the Mummy is always the one they bring back. Why is the Mummy always the big budget adaptation?
Yeah, I have no idea.
But it's always the Mummy.
And for me, when I look at the werewolf, I prefer Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's basically the same story.
It is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
I disagree.
Into this.
I disagree.
And he just walks off right there because I disagree. It was episode 206 that I decided that I disagree. And
why do I do this to myself?
I was done with those pudgy-faced apple jars.
Here's why it is not the same as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is self-inflicted. And some of the best werewolf stories are not self-inflicted. If you watch The Wolfman, Larry Talbot is just unlucky. He is cursed. He is, those who say their prayers by night, etc., etc. He is not a terrible human being, but he becomes this monster. Whereas Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, he keeps drinking the potion.
So what you're telling me is the subgenre is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde with a curse. That's what you're pitching to the studio circa 1940, whatever it is.
Well, and werewolf stories are old as time. I mean, the Native American mythology has them.
When did we go?
And so
it doesn't work.
No, but it's there. You tried.
Their wolf, their castle.
And by the way, and there's terrible werewolf films.
You're not even saying the line right. It's not their. Well, okay, never mind. Forget it. You're right.
Keep going, Jed. Anyway,
James. But anyway, no, and that's what I think. I think that's why I identify and why I love werewolf mythology is because yes, you can have that villain that seeks out, I want that power, and they seek it out, but you can also just have this poor schlub that's unlucky. And I identify with that because I'm not lucky. Things happen to me and I can try my best and it doesn't matter because the world doesn't care. And that's why, vampirism, it parallels blood disease, it parallels disease. But werewolf, I think the other reason I find it fascinating is it's one of the most flexible storytelling tools. And I don't mean to discredit those who use werewolf as story because I love werewolf stories. But if you're a vampire,
yeah,
and you follow Bram Stoker's rules or the general, I won't say Stoker's, the general accepted behavior of vampire. You can't go out in the daylight.
Yeah,
you can't be near a church. You can't be near.
That's where I hang out all the time.
And by the way, Bram Stoker's, they could go out in the sun.
I know. That's why I corrected myself. But a lot of the stereotypical, that is So basically, oh, you can't be near holy water. So all I got to do if I'm afraid of vampires is volunteer at a church that has an outdoor cross on the ceiling, like most of them do, and just hang around with water and eat pizza with garlic on it. Oh, I guess I'm safe.
Well, in all fairness, with the werewolf, all you got to do is stab it with a silver spoon.
Well, but do you have one?
Sorry, is there a Ricky Schroeder joke here?
I was going to say, and then they throw Ricky Schroeder and Alfonso Ribeiro at it.
Is that the dad's name?
No, Ricky Schroeder was the kid, and then Alfonso Ribeiro was the other little kid.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't.
You know who went on to be in Fresh Prince?
Yeah.
No, don't have any recollection of it. All I know now is Ricky Schroeder is crazy right wing.
But no, so I think that's what makes it fascinating, because you can play with that. It's the same thing as they're besieged by fate or they're questing for power. That same dichotomy that exists, you're somewhere on the spectrum. You have the same thing with how you deal with it. And I think about adaptations like Werewolves by Night. Werewolf by Night, the comic book, in some of those stories, he knows the transformation is coming. He knows the full moon is coming. So what does he do? He literally builds a place down in the sewers, and before he transforms, he shackles himself in place so he won't hurt anybody. And so, and then you have the other side of it, usually the people he has to fight who, want that power and just want to destroy and not have to feel guilt, because when we're in the mode of the beast, they don't feel guilt. Whereas he feels guilt in advance. So he removes himself from the equation by locking himself up. I think that's a more interesting story than, oh, I sleep in a coffin and I come out at night. And nothing hurts me as long as I don't go near any of this garlic. And that doesn't mean I don't like vampire stories. I love those too. But the werewolf is, to me, one of the most flexible, the most engaging, because you can play it sympathetic, you can play it terrifying, or you can run somewhere in between that. And I think there's the stories that do that well and that play with that concept well. They're classic films, they're classic books, they're classic comics. And there's tons of bad ones too.
Are you going to get into Cap Wolf?
I could, which is not a great wolf.
Captain America
became a werewolf.
Oh.
But now, in all fairness, Superman was once a werewolf. I mean, basically, let's face it, if it's an older comic book character, they went through a monster phase.
And zombies. They've all been zombies now.
Zombies, yeah.
So killed that conversation with
no, but so that's why werewolves to me, and I also think if we
haven't done zombies, let's do zombies.
I'm done with zombies now. If we lived in a world where this stuff was true,
yes,
that's what I would want to be, is a werewolf, because really, outside of the full moon, you live a normal life. You can't be killed easy, but you live a normal life.
So this is the thing that drives me insane. Well, it doesn't drive me insane, but so you get to make up your own rules.
The thing that drives me insane. I have schizophrenia.
Chemical imbalance drives me insane.
Yeah.
So
no offense,
some neurons, right? Some neurons aren't firing, but you get to make up your own rules when you're doing whatever, when you're creating. So if you're writing a novel, if you're writing a screenplay, you're making a movie, whatever, you get to make up your own rules, and then the rules of the movie is what the rules you have to follow. And just like you were talking about, Stoker they're like allergic to sunlight, but they could go out in sunlight. They just didn't like it, correct?
Right. Yeah.
And it's been a long time since I've read the book, so you feel free to correct me at any time. And then Anne Rice is like, well, crosses doesn't bother him. In fact, he even has the line, I'm pretty fond of looking at crosses, not Lestat, but the other one.
Yeah.
So you get to make up your own rules and you follow them. So it's like silver bullets and chopping their heads off. I don't know. But most of the ones we watch, and I think maybe this is a reason why it doesn't work very well in a lot of movies, is that when's a full moon? Once a month, correct? Every 20 blah, blah, blah days. All right. So that's the only time they're going to turn into werewolves. But a lot of movies, they turn into werewolves at any time, right? At the night, or the moon can just come out, correct?
Yeah.
We've all seen these movies where the moon just comes out because they got to turn into a werewolf because we got to get them to kill these people. Yep. And I'm writing the screenplay. So they don't follow their own rules. One of the few movies, and we'll start, if you guys don't mind, I'm going to start talking about, and it's not one of my favorites, although I really like the movie, and 2/3 of it are pretty good, and 1/3 of it's just silly nonsense dog shit, is Silver Bullet.
I was actually going to say I saw and I picked up and I almost I need to get it. They had a copy of Cycle of the Werewolf.
Yeah, I have it. Yeah,
Bernie Wrightson and some upstart writer guy. And what
King,
I love about it,
our audience that doesn't know, it's based on a Stephen King kind of graphic novel.
But yeah, the Bernie Wrightson art is great. I mean, literally, I saw the book in the store and I wanted it was a beat up copy in a used bookstore. That's why I didn't buy it. I wanted a better copy, but I was looking at it, and what I love about it, and I don't mean to interrupt your Silver Bullet, but Silver Bullet's based on Cycle of the Werewolf. Yeah. And Cycle of the Werewolf originally was pitched with Bernie Wrightson's art, and they were going to do it as a calendar. And Bernie Wrightson, matter of fact, they did a GoFundMe recently, and they did that. You get it that way. That being said, at the end of it, there is an end page by Stephen King where he said, you know, I wanted to stop right now. And he goes, just in case you didn't think I knew how moons worked. And he even acknowledges in the book, hey, I do understand that, you know, I have a full moon on Valentine's Day. And then I have another one on Thanksgiving. And I know the odds of that happening, it would only happen once every, blah, blah. I mean, literally he does all the maths and all that stuff. And it's really interesting though, because he's right, but then he ends it with, but you know what works in a story? That effect. I want a death on Valentine's Day and I want a death on Thanksgiving. And so to do that, guess when the moon's going to be full.
Yeah.
So to your point, and he's Stephen King, he can do that.
Well, and he's using, and I get it. And that's the reason why I'm giving them credit. At least Silver Bullet has the common decency to do it when the moon is full. Most werewolf films don't do that. And the ones that do it well will pit whomever it is. And I'm thinking of one right now as we talk, but we'll get in. I don't want to bring them all up, but it'll get in the event is of that full moon night.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Right, gentlemen, the ones that work pretty well, or the ones that are based on another kind of cycle that we will delve into as we go throughout the movies, which there's the three I just named basically are some of the best ones and are my favorites, which is cliche, but true. I'll get into one or two that aren't on a best of list that I like, but for the most part, that's what they do. That's what they do well. And that's really hard if you're trying to make it work. So let's want movies like Underworld, they just turn into werewolves when they want to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I'll be honest.
They basically Hulk out.
They Hulk out. Yeah, that's a good way to put it, James. Thank you. The only one of those movies I like is the third one, the medieval one. I really enjoyed that. It's directed by Patrick Tatopoulos, who's a brilliant production designer. But not necessarily I'm telling you to go watch it. It's medieval werewolves and vampires instead of them shooting guns at one another. I just like that. I've only ever seen it once. I'm sure if I went back and watched it, it may not be as impressed. What's another shitty one?
The worst one, the absolute worst one is Werewolf. It was made fun of by Mystery Science Theater 3000. I'll look up who directed it.
Yeah,
but
that's not the worst. James, I disagree with you that's the worst one. Get into it. Go ahead. After I'll tell mine.
I'll tell you what. You go ahead and tell yours because I'll look up who made this and we'll go from there.
So I don't have the production, who made this, but it is a piece of shit. I was actually reading about it this week. It's available on YouTube to stream for free. The Werewolf of Washington.
Well, that was called Lincoln.
So
when he ran on his second platform, he was old Abe Werewolf of Washington.
It was made in the 70s, right around the time Nixon was getting in, right before Nixon was impeached, or almost impeached, I should say. It stars Dean Stockwell, and it is super low budget. It is so low budget that they don't have lighting for the movie, so everything kind of looks like it's shot with a flashlight. Half the time you don't see the action. The wolf in question is a German Shepherd. And it's all about this lawyer who gets bit by a werewolf, and he's going around Washington, terrorizing people. And it is very low. It is absolutely terrible. It makes no sense other than the one that James is getting ready to talk about, where even Mystery Science Theater, I think it's their lowest rated episode, which says something about how terrible this movie is. But Werewolf of Washington, from what I have seen, is absolutely terrible. It makes no sense. And like I said, again, the wolf is a German Shepherd, clearly.
Yeah.
James, what do you got, man?
So Werewolf, the terrible featured on Mystery Science 3000 is not an old movie. I mean, usually MST3K used old films. This actually came out in 1995. It stars.
Oh, we are not talking about the same one. Hold on, I gotta look it up.
It stars, as much as anything can star, Joe Estevez. And it's directed by, and let me get his name correct because I'll get it wrong, and then his legion of fans will attack me. It is directed by Tony Zarandost. Tony Zarandost also gave us a bunch of other films, none of them really great. That being said, Tony Zarandost, the film it starts off with some promise. There's these archaeologists digging in the desert. They unearth bones that are odd, and they believe that they're the Native American Yamagachis, which are skinwalkers. And it actually does that, and Joe Estevez, and there's all these people that have the line, and these people are trying. Richard Lynch is in it as the expert on this. Well, one of the people get cut by one of the bones, and he's taken to the hospital because he also gets attacked by another employee who's tired of dealing with him. And in the hospital, he turns into a werewolf. And from then on, any promise this movie had is gone. It's not good. That being said, the thing that makes it so funny is that they didn't have the budget to shoot it all at once. And people's hairstyles change, and people's pronunciations even change. The actress that's in it, she is not an American actress, and her pronunciation of werewolf changes so often that in the MST3K episode, they keep making fun of her because she has lines. The protagonist of the film who is investigating this, his name is Paul, and she has scenes where she goes, "Paul, is that und werewolf?" And then later on she says werewolf perfectly fine. And she's not German either. They keep changing the pronunciation. The hairstyles change because they shot it over realistically probably 2 years. I'm making that number up, but sometimes their hair is long, sometimes it's cut short, sometimes it's styled. They did not shoot this movie linearly in a linear or quick fashion. It's not a good movie. The only interesting thing it does is try to bring in some of the Native American mythology, but they only do that in about the first 10 minutes. And then it becomes guess what? Spoiler, there's a bunch more werewolves than you think. And it's not well done.
By the way, I got to correct myself mid-episode. My brain got things jumbled again. The episode of MST3K that I'm talking about is The Amazing Transparent Man, not the werewolf movie James is talking about. So I screwed that up.
So let's talk about one that's on several lists that I saw when I was really young. It's directed by Michael Wadley. Came out, and it has a budget. And it has a cast. It has Gregory Hines, Edward James Olmos, starring Albert Finney. Have either one of you ever watched Wolfen?
No.
Wolfen, to me,
a long time ago, but
is one of the most overrated werewolf films of all time. Speaking of the dog, they basically are wolf dogs, Chad.
Okay.
And there's a great scene where there's this head, and it's set up earlier in the movie. It's the first time when I was a child I realized this is true. And then found out it was true, that you can, if you were decapitated, you can technically see for X amount of seconds. So you could fall in the basket and look back up at your squirting corpse, right?
Yep.
It's true. What'd you go?
There is a great story. I don't know the criminal, but there was a criminal long time ago. He was executed, and he did some pretty hellacious crimes, and they beheaded him. And some angry person got up on stage, picked up his head and showed it to the crowd, and he smacked it. And the whole audience got freaked out when the head itself showed signs of being irritated that it got smacked. So I think it's right around 8. I may be getting this in a Luke Perry movie, confusing my head. 8 seconds. I think it's that's how long you ride on a bull.
But I think it's like 6 or some seconds. I mean, it's enough time to fall down and look up.
Yeah.
So they deal with that, and there's a great scene where one of the police detectives, gets beheaded by one of these wolfen dogs, and it falls and it looks up. But it just makes no sense. And it's a really well shot movie. And by no means is it low budget shit like the two of you are talking about. But at the end of the day, it never did it for me. And it's always aggravated me because there's another one that you both know that pretends to be a werewolf movie that really isn't a werewolf movie. What is that, guys? A big budget film. Came out in the 90s.
Wolf?
You talking about Wolf?
Wolf.
Okay, yeah, no, I agree. And I have huge problems not only with Wolf being a piece of shit, but just the makeup and everything. I mean, they made Jack Nicholson's werewolf look
But
like
it was Rick Baker.
Yeah, I know, but he looks like old man Logan.
A little bit. And it's directed by Mike Nichols. And I was listening to Chad introduced it to me, and now that's usually my go-to if I'm listening to something is the oh darn it,
Gilbert Gottfried's
Gilbert
Amazing
Gottfried,
Philosophy.
yeah, it's a podcast, and I was listening to one of them talking about how wonderful Mike Nichols was, and how, I mean, he was a comedic genius, and he made some amazing films.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt.
But Tarantino gave the best review of that film I once heard, saying, "Oh, it's a horror film made for people who don't watch horror films."
Is it though? Is it? I don't remember it being at all like even remotely terrifying. It was just basically a drama with a.
That's what I'm saying. It's a horror film made for people who don't watch them.
God,
I mean, I enjoy parts of it, and some of it's well written and well acted. But there's no real werewolves in it, and there's just jumping around at the end, and then you find out, here's a spoiler alert, she set him up the whole time to be her mate. Correct.
They just have Martin Van Buren mutton chops. I mean, it's not, and then Rick Baker did it.
Teeth. They have some eyes and some teeth.
They do, but for the most part, it's the mutton chops.
Yeah.
A lot of people have eyes and teeth, though.
Who?
I don't know.
Who has?
I mean, it had such a
braggarts.
You want to talk about Wolfen having a great cast, and it does, but I mean, you have Jack Nicholson and James fucking Spader in the same movie,
and Michelle Pfeiffer.
Yeah,
no, it's a good. It's directed by Mike.
Michelle Pfeiffer's no Tom Noonan, Joe.
Tom Noonan.
He's in Wolfen.
Yeah. I was just sitting here going, I was just sitting here going, yeah, I don't know what to say to you, pal.
You can't argue that they are not
Tom Noonan.
Thank you. I won this argument.
I have you're right, bud. I've stood next to Tom Noonan and smelled his body odor. You're right. I bet I've never smelled Michelle Pfeiffer.
Oddly enough, the same.
There you go.
Yeah. So I know we talk about movies a lot, but we are a pop culture podcast. We also need to talk about other things. One of the things that I do love, and maybe it's why I do love werewolves as much as I do, because I don't rely on films, because films very rarely do it right. I do love the original Wolfman. Again, I think Larry Talbot's a fascinating character. I think that movie, I mean, it has Bela Lugosi, Claude Rains. It's great cast. That being said, comic books were also another thing that got me into it. And probably one of my obsessions, and I know this won't show, but I'm going to hold it up anyway and make this really odd. This is the cover to The Sword of Solomon Kane issue 2. Came out in 1985 when I would have been a young lad, probably too young to actually read that comic. But I did anyway because
you're such a badass.
Because my parents had a rule that if I would read a book, they would buy it. And my parents were so obsessed with me reading.
That's a good rule.
They were so obsessed with me reading that once I realized that included comic books, well, The Sword of Solomon Kane, if you don't know Solomon Kane, he is actually my favorite Robert Howard creation. Now, I know purists are going to say, what about Conan? I love Solomon Kane. It's largely because of books like this. Solomon
Kane's more interesting. I'll give you that.
He's more of the supernatural. I mean, Conan has a little bit of that, but Conan's a barbarian. And by the way, unlike the Conan films, if you read the books and the stories, that dude never shuts up.
Yeah, I know. That was the biggest shock for me because I think I talked to you about it like 5 years ago. Do you remember?
Yeah.
I was like, holy shit, I started reading Conan, and that fucker he talks all the time. He talks well. He just brags about himself.
Yeah.
And then Marvel turned him into a pimp.
And they don't commit suicide.
Yeah. I've never read the comics. I'm just talking about the original Robert Howard books.
But Solomon Kane as a character, I love the stories and even poems that Robert Howard wrote about Solomon Kane. For one of the reasons I like him, and I think, Joe, you said this once about why Hellboy is likable, is that there's entire stories where Solomon Kane gets everything wrong and people die because of it.
Yeah, Hellboy is just a schlub who likes
Yeah,
to eat.
He's a blue collar worker who loves cats.
Yeah.
Solomon Kane messes up one of the best Solomon Kane stories, and it's now a kind of cliched story where somebody gets killed and the hand is left or something, and the hand comes to kill somebody. Well, Robert Howard wrote that way back in the day as a Solomon Kane story, and Solomon Kane's not really in the story. He's asleep, and the hand creeps by him and kills the guy. And the next day he gets up, and the hand has gone, but he sees the distinct handprint on the neck, and he's killed the guy that Solomon Kane was supposed to protect or whatever. It's been a while since I've read it, but I do remember that. That being said, the second issue of Solomon Kane, so that when Marvel started adapting Solomon Kane stories, they didn't adapt too many. But the second issue was the first one that wasn't completely based on a Robert Howard story. And the second issue has him dealing with werewolves. And what's really interesting about it, it's actually, there's other things going on as well. He's in the woods and he runs across this child that's staying by the campfire to keep things away. And at the end of it, basically, you find out that the father was killed, but he was killed by the boy because the boy is a werewolf. And he's using the fire to create smoke to obscure the moon so the moon won't hit him. And it was I was probably 5, if not a little younger, when I read that story. And it just zoomed in on my mind about, again, this kid didn't go into the forest to kill his dad. But once he becomes a werewolf, Solomon Kane goes, "You're a creature of evil now. I've got to end you." And he's an 8-year-old kid or a 7-year-old kid, and Solomon Kane has to kill him. And it just stuck in my little mind, and it automatically made me go, "Man, werewolves, there's something to it." And so I wanted to bring that up because I think that's one of the things that don't get a lot of consideration. And again, not all werewolf movies, as you all were showing, are good. A lot of them are turkeys. But as a story device, werewolves can represent so many different things, and I do love them for that. So, yeah.
So, should we talk more about the ones that we actually like? What do you think, gentlemen?
Well, I want to shit on a couple more.
Go for it.
These lists. Teen Wolf. Now
I can't get on you on Teen Wolf because that's actually one of the first movies I saw that involved werewolves, and I actually enjoyed it as a kid. I'm not going to say that I wouldn't enjoy it now. I have not seen Teen Wolf since I was in my early 20s.
Why that it's another one that's on a bunch of these lists?
Because it's iconic.
I guess.
It made it cool, right?
I mean, I think I missed it in either of course I saw it, but as far as the iconoclast or whatever you want to call it, they did make a series out of it. They made a sequel to it. It was a big enough hit to do that.
Yeah, but the series has nothing to do with either one of the movies.
I never watched it. I
haven't either, but I know plot points. I'm like, that's not Teen Wolf.
Yeah. So Teen Wolf is one of them, and I'm trying to think. There's a few that I never even heard of. Oh, I do have a question. Do you guys? To me, this is a third correct. Trick or Treat, which is one of my favorite Halloween films.
Yes.
I like what it does with the werewolves too. So
same here.
But I never thought of as a werewolf film because it's just kind of that one story in it.
Yeah, I agree with you that was the one that I read on list when I knew of the werewolf movies that I like. And I was having a hard time because I put together the list of werewolf movies that I know and like. And that wasn't one of them. And then I went and looked at some stuff online. I'm like, why is it showing up? Because there are werewolves in it, but they're in there for all of what?
Well, they actually don't turn into it for maybe 5 minutes, and it's probably less than 5 minutes.
If that, yeah.
They haven't, and it's a great plot twist. If you've never seen it, actually, Trick or Treat is probably one of those films I do agree that should be a Halloween. I haven't watched it this year, and I don't think I got to watch it last year because of the kid, but that it is a great Halloween movie.
Yeah, I will say this though, the plot twist. When I first watched it, I'm like, oh, that was a surprise. But then I'll look back and I'm like, that should not have been that big of a plot twist.
Oh yeah, you already saw it coming.
So I know, and that's what kills me. It's the same thing with Sixth Sense. Like Sixth Sense was ruined for me, so I'm like, that's not a plot twist. But of course, I knew what it was going in. So yeah, I was just like, But no, I'm not shitting on Trick or Treat. I love that
no,
movie.
I just don't. Yeah, I just never think of it as a werewolf film. So
I don't either.
what do you guys like? Since we've shat out other things,
Well, I want to
could
talk
probably
about
think of
the.
something else.
I want to talk about the movie as a kid that made me like werewolves, and it's not the one that we all three love. I didn't fall.
Is it on a poster behind me?
Yeah, I didn't.
I changed it out.
I didn't get introduced to that one until I was a teenager. Monster Squad. I
see that's another one I don't think of as a werewolf film.
I don't either, but it has a werewolf in it, and that
It
was my introduction to werewolves. I'm like, holy shit, werewolves are actually kind of cool. But then I started watching more werewolf movies, and I'm like, oh, I don't care for werewolves much.
That character actor is a really good guy. He's also in Napoleon. I mean, he's a really good actor. I've never met him.
Yeah, he's a really great actor.
That's actually got a really good transformation scene when he's in the phone booth.
Yeah. And that's, you talk about a werewolf movie not making any sense about how he changes into werewolf. There's nothing. Yeah, it makes no sense.
We've talked about Monster Squad on here before, and I realize that a lot of people have a fondness for it. I do too. I love that opening 10-15 minutes of it before they go back in time. I just rewatching it as a grown man, there are so many just don't make any damn sense plot holes in that film, and it's barely 80 minutes long.
Yeah, I know, but that's, like I said, that's the same thing with, we're not going to get into that, but I mean, it's Goonies, Monster Squad. A lot of those movies from the 80s have huge plot holes that make no sense. But when you grew up in the 80s and that's what you had, I still have that attachment to him. And I can still watch, kick him in the, Wolfman has nards is one of the most iconic lines in movie history.
It's right up there with, frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
And just like Michelle Pfeiffer's No Tom Noonan, 2 arguments in 1 episode, I win.
I don't know about the second one, but you're right. She's no Tom Noonan.
But no, I just love that movie, that line as a kid. Wolfman has nards. But I mean, yeah, it was my introduction to the Wolfman. I had not seen a Wolfman movie, and I hadn't seen Teen Wolf yet either. That was my introduction to the Wolfman. And I'm like, and just seeing the transformation in that phone booth and watching him run around. I liked werewolves, of course, but like I said, when I started watching other werewolf movies, I'm like, it's just not there for me. So yeah, that's why Monster Squad has an attachment to me in terms of werewolves, because it made me like werewolves.
James?
Yeah, it's not a werewolf film, but I think as we're talking about wolves,
so I'm going to have spaghetti at the end.
Well, it is. It's hard to qualify, and
should you feel ashamed that you changed it to? We always say lasagna, and you would switch it to spaghetti.
No,
actually, really. The line from Silence of the Lambs or Silence of the Hams, I'm sorry, and I still laugh every time it does it. Is, do you like spaghetti? Yeah, not too bad. I made tacos. Anyway.
Yes, James.
Brotherhood of the Wolf.
That's a werewolf film.
That's a werewolf movie.
I remember when it came out.
Yeah. You're right, James. All right, I thought about it.
Is it not?
Yeah.
I don't know. But I remember when it came out, it was huge for 10 minutes, and people didn't stop talking about it for those 10 minutes. Probably a couple weeks after it came out. It was a big international hit.
Was because it's based on a true story. I'm doing air quotes on this. A friend of ours who's been on the show before, Nick, does a whole presentation about it at conventions. If you ever get a chance to watch it, I'll add his last name when I remember it later.
Nick Brown.
Nick Brown, thank you. Nick Brown,
who, by the way, also writes some really good werewolf stories. You should check out his books.
He has an obsession with werewolves, and it started with a movie that was made in the last 20 years that we'll get to in a few minutes, but as I recall from that episode. But Nick can do about the French town where these wolves are attacking people, and what that really was and how that actually happened. And I don't think they've ever. It's another one of those true.
It's technically an unsolved.
It's technically an unsolved mystery, and they made a movie about it, and it's a really cool movie. I don't have anything else to add. You're right. I don't know that technically it's a werewolf film though.
But I can't not think about it. Like if I'm thinking about werewolves, because if you've seen the movie, it is so atmospheric. And yes, I am sure Nick Brown is absolutely correct. There is no truth in that movie. I mean, other than, yes, people got killed, wolves were involved. Mm-hmm. But the setup to that and the kind of the way that movie shot is really well done. If you've never seen it, you should check it out.
Well, So let me bring up one that we don't talk about a lot on here that has some of the best, and it's directed by Neil Jordan, and it came out in the 80s, and it has one of the some of the best transformation scenes in it, which is a damn hard thing to say because it came out after The Howling and American Werewolf in London. But The Company of Wolves with Angela Lansbury.
I'm going to be honest with you guys. I have not seen this one. I want to see it.
So it's an art house werewolf picture with Angela Lansbury. That's a hell of a sentence to say, but it is accurate. And it has so much atmosphere, but I think I watched it too young and I've never really rewatched it. And I think I'd probably enjoy it more now because it has Stephen Ray, one of my favorite actors, is a great Irish actor. He's in all of Neil Jordan's films, or at least most of Neil Jordan's films. And just truly one of the best, because if you've never seen it, I'm going to describe it to you a little bit. The transformation, instead of just the hair growing and them growing out, they peel the human skin back to reveal the wolf. The wolf will come out of the mouth. There's a great, I have the poster, and if you look up Company of Wolves on online and you see that poster, I have that poster. I've never framed it. It's such a cool poster. I don't know that I want to recommend it to everybody because I just haven't seen it in a long time. But if you are into werewolves and you like cool practical transformation effects, I feel like that's one that gets lost. What do you all think? I don't hear a lot of people talk about it.
I knew of it, but when I started doing research and after I put together my list, I'm like, I forgot this movie existed. And then I realized I'd never seen it. And
Neil Jordan would go on to direct The Crying Game, for everybody who doesn't know that.
He's also, and also Mona Lisa, which was his movie that followed this movie. And Michael Collins. Yep. He's a very talented director.
Irish filmmaker.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to, are we going to talk about We're No Angels?
No, we're not going to talk about We're No Angels. I think he also directed High Spirits. Am I correct?
Yeah, those were back to back.
Yeah. High Spirits may be slightly better, but not good.
But no, I really want to see this movie. This was one of those movies when I did the research, I'm like, I got to see this movie because I didn't know, I'd forgotten that it existed just because it never hit my radar. So I would love to see the transformations and everything else about it.
They're really cool in my head. So what else we got, gentlemen? What else do you like? You guys are being quiet.
No, one of the things I do want to acknowledge.
You mean James?
Yeah, I was going to say the person who likes the werewolves.
No, one of the things I want to acknowledge, because it's we've talked about it before. We've interviewed people that were involved in it, and it's one that I wish would have been better. And I just want to mention it because I love Christina Ricci. And I was going to get my interests were going to collide. We were going to get Christina Ricci.
I still didn't, even when you say Christina Ricci, I still didn't realize what movie you're talking about. I was 10 seconds afterwards before it clicked in my head.
And I thought he was I thought he was leading up to
what could that have been? And it always will feel like the one that got away as a concept.
Right. And if you listen to our last episode with Todd Farmer, the concept by Kevin Williamson was far superior to anything they shot. And if you're into Kirsten, you're like, oh, I always want to watch the director's cut, do us a favor, go check out the Patrick Lussier episode of this. He details the whole damn process and why there is no director's cut of that picture.
I'm surprised James hasn't talked about one. And I just keep waiting for him, but he's being silent on the one that is his favorite. FDR American Badass.
Actually, I was gonna do an entire thing about comedies near the end, but go ahead, because that's the great.
It's on no.
You need to bring it up because I want you to bring it up.
That's on no. You just brought it up. That's on no list I saw.
Are you serious?
By the way,
not one list.
I got my copy in that when Barry Bostwick did Scarefest a few years ago. My copy, because that's what I wanted him to sign. It came in 2 days late, and that's why he didn't. Because that film. There's two of them, actually, I should say. But that film is just, it's offensive.
It's funny.
It is offensive, but it's got Lynn Shay as the first lady. It's got Barry Bostwick as FDR. It's made on almost no budget, but basically the plot is, and this is what, hold on, let me get us some conspiracy subscriber. Now, this is what the man doesn't want you to know. But it turns out Adolf Hitler and all the axis of evil or whatever, them were all werewolves. And see, FDR didn't have polio. He got bit by a werewolf, but didn't fully turn. And he was just fortunate that his genitals worked.
Because what's the best line in that movie, Chad?
James, I have to answer it. I don't know.
You don't remember the best line in the movie? It's my favorite line. Does my cock still work? How do you guys not remember that?
I remember it.
And this was a direct ripoff of the fact that it came out the same year as Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, right?
But you know what? I'm going to go.
One of those is a superior film.
That's what I was going to say.
FDR.
I'm going to say because I love Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter, the book. And it was made. The screenplay was written by the guy that wrote the book. And I don't know. It may have
got changed by somebody else.
Maybe. But I honestly, because the book deals with Edgar Allan Poe's in the book, there's other cameos. It goes into the background about why all this stuff is happening and the Confederacy and all that. And a lot of that didn't make it into the movie because that book should not have been good. But when somebody turned me onto the book and then somebody else recommended it and said, no, it's better than it has any right to be. And I read it and I was like, oh, it really is. And then I heard the movie was coming out and I was like, oh, this can't possibly go wrong. And then I saw it in the theater and I was disappointed. Had I not read the book, had I not had high expectation from the book, I would have enjoyed it more. So if you like the movie and you're like, you're just a hater. No, the book is just richer.
I don't know anybody that likes the movie. I don't think I've ever met a soul that went, oh my God, the movie. People don't even talk about it. I bet most people don't even remember it. I liked Timar. I can't say his name. He's Russian. I loved Wanted. I liked his other movie, his Russian film, Night Watch. I like two of his other pictures are great. But
Nobody came out this year and it is fantastic.
Did he direct Nobody?
I thought he did. I might.
Oh wait,
no. I'm wrong. Other Russian, Hardcore Henry.
Yeah, that guy. So let's talk about some more of our favorites. You want me to go?
Go.
Sure.
Can I go ahead and talk about Dog Soldiers?
Dude. Yeah.
I'm
Dog
serious.
Soldiers.
Dog Soldiers is, I know it's aliens. I know it's aliens in the woods. I know what he's doing. But I'll be damned if he don't do it so good. And it's directed by Neil Marshall. And it's his first big budget. Well, it's not a big budget, low budget film. And basically it's this paramilitary troop. If you've never seen it, Mick, if you've never seen it, go listen to it or go watch it right now. You'll love it.
Mick hasn't seen Dog Soldiers?
I have no idea. I'm just
okay.
I just wanted to show him some attention. He gave me a hug the other day, so I feel like I should love on him a little bit. But anyway, Todd, if you've never, there's only two famous people that like us, Mick and Todd. All right.
Yeah.
So if you've never seen Dog Soldiers, directed by Neil
Marshall.
Marshall's what I said. And thank you so much for correcting me. I saw it on the Sci-Fi Channel when it premiered by accident. I was a director at Alumni Tower at Moorhead, and it just had a theatrical run in England and ended up on the Sci-Fi Channel here. I just happened to catch it. I don't even know why I was in that Saturday night, other than, who's going to take me out on Saturday night, or why I was even watching the Sci-Fi Channel, other than I'm a big nerd. Okay, statistically, I probably should have been watching it. However, fell in love with it. Eventually bought it when it came out on DVD or Blu-ray or whatever. And it is one of the best low budget werewolf films ever made. And I'm going to defend him. I know the plot's aliens. I know that, but even the werewolves look cool. Don't you guys agree?
Oh, I agree. They're tall. They're menacing. Tall, they're scary.
Menacing. Yeah. And the way he shoots them, I'm sure those were cheap ass rug suits, but the way he shot it and the way he got away around it looks amazing. And it has several character actors in that movie who go on to do some more stuff, get real lucky casted really well. Some great Scottish actors in that.
Sean Pertwee, Liam Cunningham, and Kevin McKidd. Those three guys are amazing.
Yeah, and they all went on to do stuff, right? Which one of them's in Gotham?
That'd be Sean Pertwee as Alfred.
Yeah, he's a great character actor. She's a fantastic character actor.
Yeah, and Kevin McKidd, of course. He's not out of the two, but Kevin McKidd, he was great in Rome and a few other things. And then Liam Cunningham, of course, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, he's the Onion Knight in Game of Thrones. He's just, they're all, and he's the bad guy in this. Yeah, kind of the bad guy. And he also has a twist ending at the end, remember?
I'll be honest with you, I've forgotten the ending.
With the lady and her family.
Can't remember. Sorry.
Oh, damn. Well, it's good. It has a little bit of twist. I can't recommend that one enough. There's 2 or 3 other werewolf films that I absolutely love, but I wanted to talk about Dog Soldiers for a second. Go ahead. Actually, and is there not much of a transform? There's a little bit of a transformation. Just the werewolves look cool. They're
Just a little bit.
Bipedal. Is that what it's when they're 2-legged?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bipedal.
All right. Who's up?
James, you go.
I think we need to mention, because it does have quite a few fans, Wolf Cop and Wolf Cop 2.
I've never seen them though.
I was going to bring it up since we were.
Go ahead, Chad, because I haven't seen Wolf Cop 2. Full disclosure. So go ahead.
I have not seen Wolf Cop 2 either. I keep waiting for it to come out to where I can see it. No, I've seen Wolf Cop, and it was just one of those movies that came along, and I just sit down and watch it, going, "Well, this will be fun." And it was I enjoyed it, just like I did Uncle Peckerhead. I was not expecting that movie to be slightly entertaining, and I was like, "Oh, there's something in this." I actually enjoyed. Same thing with Wolf Cop. It just blew me away at the sheer madness of the plot, and the gore, and everything else about it. I could not get enough of it. James, have you seen it?
I'll be honest. I got to see the first half of it, and I didn't get to finish it. And then
I gotta be honest. No, I've never seen it.
No, I didn't. I
brought it up, but I've never seen it.
I didn't get to watch all of it. That's why I said, please go ahead, because I wanted, much like you wanted to see 2. I wanted to finish it, and then I think my kid came out, and I couldn't watch it because I didn't want to scar my child.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of scarring that can be done watching Wolf Cop because it's very graphic.
Is it better than Uncle Peckerhead? I'm not being a peckerhead.
No, it is.
Okay.
I know, and that's what. But there's a behind the scenes discussion that me and Joe had. I said, Joe, whatever you do, don't watch Uncle Peckerhead. You will not like it, just because I know he would come back and rip me apart for even mentioning it. And of course, what does he do? He goes behind and watches it so he can tell me it's a piece of shit.
Well, in my memory is you told me to watch it.
No, I told James to watch it.
I'm not arguing with you.
No, I know.
I'm telling you in my memory.
I guess I would chat on this one, which hurts me on a
Yeah, I told James to watch it.
2/3 of it. I still haven't figured out what how he finally gets the band where they need to go.
Oh, Joe, it's a movie called Uncle Peckerhead, buddy.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to these werewolves. One of the things I do want to also mention, and this is unpopular, and it's not a great film, but I love the way it's done and the accuracy. And it was an unnecessary remake. But the 2010 Wolfman.
2/3 of that movie are correct.
It's pretty. It's pretty.
It's beautiful. It's directed by Joe Johnston.
Yeah, we all saw that in the theater together too.
Yeah.
And I had the extended cut, and I watched it, and I was like, again, it is.
The third act goes to shit, right?
It just does.
There's a couple films that I love, and I would include this in that, and that I love them for their look and their atmosphere, the atmosphere, and the talent that are in them. I mean, and I would include in that Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein. Again, there's something about them, but they just don't pull it off in the end. But I love them because they try things that others didn't try, and they do things. And I love the fact that Joe Johnston, he does all these period pieces, the first Captain America movie even. And he does these little details that show, yes, I know something about the history. Even in Wolfman, where they have the candles and he has the guard to where, you want to have the glare from the candle, but it's reflective, so it projects light out. Mm-hmm. And I was like, those existed, and what a fascinating little detail you would add to your film. And so while the Wolfman doesn't succeed at being the Wolfman as far as a remake goes,
and the casting's not bad in that movie either.
No, it's
I
not.
have no problem with anybody that cast that movie.
Well, and Anthony Hopkins, I mean, man, there's so much there, but it's like you said, there's just something. By the time the third act gets there, you're like,
it's the script. They never got it right.
I'm glad I took the ride, and it's a ride. Like I said, I own the extended cut on DVD. I've taken the ride again, but it's something that I'll take the ride, but I have a hard time telling other people, "Hey, you should check this out." Like there's movies that I love that I don't recommend. I mentioned Silence of the Hams earlier. I laugh at it. Do I think most people are going to? No. There's something about it's something for me.
Yeah.
Now,
I mean, beneath-
James, you just sorry, Joe, not to interrupt, but you just spent all that time talking about how much you love Joe Johnston and his director work. So is this where you're going to talk about how much you love Jurassic Park 3?
That film doesn't exist. I don't know if you know this, Joe. Or
I don't know
Chad,
why I
whoever's on.
always think it's better than part 2. But
I think it's better than part 2 as well.
That is a suck fest. I think it's because when I write it, you could tell they were still making it up as they went. Like that is
I enjoyed it more than Jurassic World.
That is the most.
Oh, I don't know about that. I like Jurassic World.
I mean, Jurassic World is nothing new, but it's
Yeah.
okay.
And I
Jurassic
like the
World.
I like the second one, haunted house one too. So there you go.
Jurassic World.
Did you see Jurassic World sequel, Chad?
Yeah, haunted house.
If they're in the house, right? It looks like a haunted house. It's a haunted.
Oh, yeah, okay. I got you.
That movie. The last half of that movie is a haunted house picture.
Yeah.
Jurassic World is Jurassic Park for people like my father, in that it's full of explosions. It's full of ooh.
It worked on me, by the way. It's so bad, but it does work. I do enjoy it.
Yeah. No,
it's fun. But we're back off of werewolves again. Thank you, Chad, for making him go down that.
You're welcome. And now I'm more concerned the fact that Alexander Payne gets credit for writing Jurassic Park 3.
All right. So do we want to talk about a little bit? Well, how many
we
more
haven't talked about one that I think we all three like.
Can I talk about one I haven't seen that I now want to see? There's two I want to see that I haven't seen when I was doing research.
We already talked about Maniac Wolf Cop.
No.
By the way, I will write that. I will write Maniac Wolf Cop.
There's two werewolf films I discovered doing research for this, and I don't know how I haven't seen these.
There's one that I did too that I would
really
like to
want to see these. So inspired by the success of biker movies, and Roger Corman's success, as we all know, there were much like car movies, there was a ton of films made about, oh, you've got a motorcycle, we'll do a motorcycle gang movie, we'll do things like this. And it's not high rated, but it's high rated enough to where there's got to be something to it. The plot to this movie is that a biker gang encounters Satanists and they fight the Satanists, but the Satanists, the head of the satanic church, puts a curse on their leader to where he will have to hunt the other members of his bicycle gang when he turns into
say bicycle
gang?
I'm sorry, motorcycle gang. Sorry, that's a different movie. That would be the Muppet Babies.
You turn into freaking Ward Cleaver at a drop of a hat.
Kids. Anyway, no.
Weren't you a little hard on the beaver last night, James?
1971's Werewolves on Wheels is about a biker gang leader that is cursed to have to kill everybody in his gang after they fight Satanists. And it's about him literally having to hunt down his own team. It's got for a bad 70s werewolf movie, it's got a pretty good rating. I think it's a 6.1 out of 10. I'd never heard of it, and I've got to see it. The other one I've got to see is really recent, as in 2020. And that is, hold on, let me pull it up because it actually it's gotten relatively good reviews as well. And that is Jim Cummings, but not that Jim Cummings, Chad. Sorry. I was hoping it was the same guy too. But his film, and I just had it pulled up and I lost it. This is embarrassing. I mean, not for me, but for you.
Well, while you're looking it up, I'll say mine. Mine is full. Mine, when I did research that I want to see that I have not, I will know in advance that this is going to be a terrible movie. It stars Mario Van Peebles, who I have a love of Mario Van Peebles.
Seen it.
You've seen Full Eclipse?
Yeah, it was an HBO film.
Oh my God.
As a kid.
Now I got to go see if it's on HBO Max. I didn't know. No, if you haven't seen Full Eclipse,
not good.
It's not. But
it's half watchable.
I was going to say, I tried to watch Cast a Deadly Spell, and even then, I had a hard time getting through.
So I have a special place in my heart for that movie because it was the first time I got to see some Lovecraft as a child.
Okay.
Which I shouldn't have been watching that movie as a child. First of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, I shouldn't have had that much access to HBO. Thirdly, I rewatched it last year with Christy. It is extremely flawed, but directed by Martin Campbell, who would go on to give us Casino Royale and GoldenEye.
And Green Lantern.
Well, yeah, that's true too. He did an interview last month. Did you see it? Did you read it?
Yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, I was like, I don't even know why I did it. I love James Bond. I don't know anything about comics. It's like, well, yeah, we all picked up on it.
But no, if you haven't seen Full Eclipse, it's about this guy who has to put together this special task force, and it's a bunch of werewolves on a cops. And it's so yeah, I have to see it now. I'm gonna watch
Cast the Deadly Spells better.
What?
Cast the Deadly Spells better.
I haven't seen it. I can't judge it, but I could. Cast the Deadly Spell was a little hard for me to get through.
It has David Warner.
I don't want to hear Mr. shitting on Monster Squad and Goonies for its plot holes.
I don't remember any. It's like his daughter's doing something, and the one guy fucks her in the back of the car before the end of it, so she's not a virgin, and basically Cthulhu eats David Warner.
Well, that sounds fair.
That sounds about right. Chad froze.
He has that effect on me too. Well,
so,
I guess
while we're still recording, I'll let you know that they did a sequel to Cast the Deadly Spell. See, James can't. He can argue
it's on.
with me now.
It's on HBO Max.
You're right. It's called Witchcraft, and they replaced him with Dennis Hopper. So Chad will never be able to refute what I just said for the last 5 minutes. Welcome back, Chad.
Thanks. Hi.
So
I agree.
But that
Tom
was
Noonan.
the gospel. You could listen to it later.
By the way, the other movie I want to see that came out in 2020 is called The Wolf of Snow Hollow. And so I'll just read the plot description because I was like, oh, it could be done really well. I don't know if it is because I haven't seen it, but I want to see it. Terror grips a small mountain town as bodies are discovered after each full moon. Losing sleep, raising a teenage daughter, and caring for his ailing father, Officer Marshall struggles to remind himself there's no such thing as werewolves. That could be a great story about you're dealing with reality and then the exceptional come in, the supernatural comes in. And so I want to see that. I think it could be good. By the way, if we ever revisit this, I'll probably give an update and I may be disappointed. One other thing that I wanted to mention that's not a movie, and I know, again, I try to keep this pop culture related. This was originally started as a Kickstarter. And actually, if you buy the first issue, I'm part of the special thanks in the back because I donated a little bit of money to get started, but it took off and it's now rated as one of the best werewolf comic series. And I'm going to mispronounce it because it's a word that I've only ever read. So make fun of me as needed. Anathema. Anyway, it's a term. But it's Rachel Deering is the author and creator of this comic series. And it's all about, it deals with the first issue, which I own, is all about this woman is in a relationship with another woman in, the Dark Ages, which would extra frowned upon by the church then.
Does this book got pictures?
Yes.
Is it a pop-up book?
It's a comic book, Joe. It's a graphic novel.
Oh, I watched that.
The first one. Anyway, and they burn them at the stake, except one of them doesn't die and is cursed basically or comes back to the werewolf. But it's all about how far will you go. And it's kind of, Joe, for a parallel, it's like Pumpkinhead.
Mm.
It's what does vengeance make you become? Is it worth it? What does it mean? And all that.
I enjoy Pumpkinhead better than werewolf movies.
Well, I don't know. The Pumpkinhead's better than a couple we're about to talk about.
Yeah, no, it's not.
But
because we
left do a shit love Pumpkinhead.
Yes, and we left I think we've saved the best two for last, in my opinion.
We're missing three.
One other thing that I want to mention, for those that don't know, Archie Comics has for years they had Sabrina the Teenage Witch and they had all that stuff. But in recent years, they've started doing these little horror stories like Archie Afterlife, which is about Archie and Archie is killed, by the way, and all that stuff. But one that somebody turned me on to, and I haven't got to read it yet, so no spoilers, please. But there is actually a series that's called Jughead the Hunger. And it hypothesizes what would happen if Jughead from the Archie comics became a werewolf. And I'll be honest, I kind of want to see how that one plays out. It's pretty highly rated as well. So there you go.
All right, gentlemen, let's talk about some of the top ones. Chad, and then me. I want to see which one you pick.
Well, I want to say one, but I don't remember much about it because it's been years. But so I'm just going to go with American Werewolf in London.
Well, American Werewolf in London is my favorite werewolf film.
Same here.
It is probably it and Shaun of the Dead, well, and maybe Evil Dead 2, are the three best comedy horror films ever made.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It takes you a second, and then you go, yeah, boy, it sure is hard as shit to beat Evil Dead 2. Sure is hard to beat Shaun of the Dead. Shaun of the Dead, what's better than Evil Dead 2?
No, I was going to say, I've got a fourth I could add to you.
What is it?
What We Do in the Shadows, which actually has one of my favorite werewolf scenes in it.
It is, but it does not reach it for me to there. I mean, Shaun of the Dead, Romero loved Shaun of the Dead so much that he had a pin that he wore the last few years of his life on his vest. The famous vest is like 2 in the head, Shaun of the Dead. I think one of my, and I love Shaun of the Dead. My wife loves Shaun of the Dead. She has a Winchester shirt and all of that stuff. We saw it when we were dating or just married or something. So we have it has a place in my heart. That being said, I think one of my issues with Shaun of the Dead is not that movie is great. I will take nothing away from that movie. I just zombies. It's zombies. Yeah. Well, past that, when Shaun of the Dead was made, it wasn't that much. So, well, there was a lot.
Oh, there was.
But American
Zombies
Wolf
is one of the most overused.
American Werewolf in London was a script that he wrote when he was a young man. John Landis, writer, director, was a script that he wrote when he was a young man, and actually ended up because he worked on Kelly's Heroes. Am I correct, Chad?
Yep.
And he was they shot Kelly's Heroes behind the Iron Curtain. And you probably, if you're listening to this, if you didn't live through it, and we barely lived through the Cold War, just a little bit towards the end of it. For all intents and purposes, we didn't grow up in the 60s and 70s getting under our desk preparing for nuclear fallout. Right. But if you did, that was something to go over there, especially if it was, I think it was Yugoslavia. And he had an incident where he met some gypsies, legitimate gypsies, and told a story, and it stuck in his head, and he wrote a screenplay for it and went back to Hollywood because he was a PA and nothing else, and made a couple of movies till then. But the screenplay sat around for years and he couldn't get it made, but it actually he talks about how it got him a lot of work. Get him work writing, because people would find, oh, this is scary and funny, but I don't know, you can't be both. What are we going to do with it? So American Werewolf in London is about two guys who go on a backpacking trip through Europe, get attacked by a werewolf. One of them gets murdered and killed, although murdered and killed seems slightly redundant now that I've said it out loud, but he is pretty fucked up, murdered and killed. And then the other one goes back. I gotta believe most of you out there know the plot of this. And the other one lives through it, starts having nightmares, and as it gets closer to the full moon, his friend Jack keeps visiting him in more and more. I'm trying to think of the word.
Decomposing.
Decay, yeah, decay is what I'm trying to say, and more decay. It's some of the best Rick Baker work you'll ever see. And
that's one movie that, like you said, it keeps to the rule.
It keeps to the rules. And
he never changes until the full moon. And
if you're thinking, well, hold on. It's the moon kind of comes out. He does slip a little bit towards the end of it.
That's right.
Because he changes that next night after he kills those people. But watch it if you've never seen it. If you're expecting a gore fest, that's not what this is.
No,
it has once again, it's a John Landis film, and we've talked about needle drop music on here before. It has it has 3 or 4 different versions of Blue Moon on it. It has Bad Moon Rising by Creedence. I don't know that it gets much better. Practical effects, comedy, it's laugh out loud. I don't know that it holds up so much with the scary part now, but the transformation scene is in full lighting daylight. That took balls of steel. So the movie I was going to talk about afterward, which one were you going to say, Chad?
It was Ginger Snaps.
Ginger Snaps. Before we get to that, can I get the other one that we're all missing? The Howling.
Yeah.
The Howling came out the same year. I'm sorry, James.
No, go ahead.
The thing is that for years John was going to do this, and Rick Baker had worked on this script. They were going to do it together, whenever he got his money. And the change-o head, where the head would change, Rick Baker designed that. Well, the Howling went into production and tried to hire Rick Baker. And John found out, was like, no, you got to do this damn movie. You got to quit. And they got the money together. Well, The Howling then was taken over by a young assistant of Rick Baker's. And who would that be, gentlemen? Rob Bottin.
Okay.
Rob Bottin did the changeover head. So if you look in The Howling, it's in shadows, which also has a wonderful transition and a wonderful changing, but it bubbles out more than it does in the Rick Baker version. And then Rob Bottin would also give us John Carpenter's The Thing, which is maybe some of the best practical effects ever put on celluloid. So that was a long-winded thing to you really have to watch that. The Howling has some humor in it, but it's also directed by Joe Dante. It was a huge hit. And it was funny because werewolves were dead when these movies came out in the 81. And they both, actually, I think The Howling may have been slightly more successful than American Werewolf in London. Now, American Werewolf in London, visually, it just holds up more to me. But The Howling has a bunch of great Slim Pickens. It has a lot of character actors in it. So check it out. Late Dick Miller, of course, because it's directed by Joe Dante. The Howling's a cool movie. Now, do you want to talk, James, do you have anything to add to it?
Well, I wanted to mention real quick, because y'all are naming the best, and I do. I will defend the Wolfman, the original Wolfman.
Yeah, we just talked about it earlier, I thought.
Well, we did, but I wanted to, the stories behind that, so much of what is modern, quote unquote, mythology of comes from this Kurt, is it Siodmak?
Siodmak. Yeah.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, the author, the screenwriter, he came up with most of that and made it up. I mean, he looked at some mythology. But the other thing I wanted to mention about this, because it's my favorite piece of trivia about the film, if you go back and find the original trailer, there's a scene that is not in the movie that is flashed in the trailer. And it's my favorite story about them filming this movie. Because there was a scene where the Wolfman in full wolf regalia, fights a bear. And they were filming this scene. And my favorite piece of trivia about this, do you know the story, Joe?
No, I don't know this.
He was fighting the bear. Of course, it's a trained bear. The bear freaked out because it was fighting this wolf man and ran away. They couldn't find that there was a bear wandering around because he ran away from the wolf man. So they leave. If you watch the original trailer, you'll see just a snippet, but there's only a snippet because the bear freaks out and ran away, and they couldn't get the bear to come back to film the scene. So it was wandering the woods because it wouldn't fight the wolf man. If you didn't know that trivia, there's a bunch of trivia, but yeah, the rhymes and the, he says his prayers by night, will be, the wolfsbane, all of that stuff, the silver being how to wound them, the silver bullet, all that is all from the film. It's not actually from mythology, but he did it so well that everybody went, yeah, that's it. That's yeah, that must be true. Right. So, I know we talked about it earlier, but I had to share the bear story because it's just one of those things that when I learned that, I was like, A, cool that it's in the trailer. At least we shot it. We might as well put it somewhere. But B, the Wolfman actually scared a real life bear away. And that is fascinating. So sorry, I just wanted to tell that story.
Chad, you want to talk about Ginger Snaps?
Yeah, I was hoping you all could lead that conversation. I just know I remember liking it a whole lot, but I don't remember anything about it.
Ginger Snaps is about two young ladies who are starting to come into their own. They're developing as women,
right?
And start going into details. So there's the movie is just one huge damn metaphor,
right,
about change and changing and what you're becoming, and not necessarily even about I don't want to start using flowery language like blossoming into womanhood, but that is what is happening. And not only with that, one of them, Ginger, is starting to get interested in boys, and the others not so much yet. And they're changing and growing apart at the same time. I mean, the whole damn movie's a metaphor. And Ginger Snaps is about these two young girls who are outcasts, who are starting to get their periods. And one night, because of that, they get bit by a werewolf, and one of them starts to turn Ginger into a werewolf. That's the plot. It deals with sex. It deals with womanhood. It deals with becoming an adult. It deals with relationships of how they change, how they don't necessarily, friendships don't necessarily change with each other and you grow apart.
Yeah. And I find it, and this is one of the frustrating parts about this. And I'll be honest with you, Ginger Snaps is a great film. And I have a hard time with, why is Jennifer's body more well remembered versus Ginger Snaps?
I don't know, because I never thought Jennifer's Body was good, but I haven't watched it since it came out.
I don't think it's good either, but it's basically telling the same story.
Yeah.
But Ginger Snaps is superior.
And Ginger Snaps also had 2 low budget sequels made for it. Actually, the second one is on a couple of lists, and I agree it's not bad. It's it takes it into kind of an insane asylum.
But don't they lose something in those sequels though that is not there in the first one?
Agreed. But for sequels to a movie that was so original, but yet another werewolf film about 2 girls transforming into women, then yes. But the sequel is better than it has any right to be.
Yeah, it's no American Werewolf in Paris.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The movie didn't need a sequel, but this sequel is better than it has any right to be. Okay. The third one is the Ginger, and I'm so sorry, I don't remember the other girl's name, the character's name in the movie, and dealing with this back in like the 1600s or 1700s or whatever, is in an outpost. So I truly recommend Ginger Snaps. If you've never seen it, it's fairly easy to find streaming. I don't know why more people don't discover it, like Chad's talking about. Because to me, there's just tons of metaphors. There's tons of going on there. I haven't watched it in years. I need to rewatch it.
Yeah, that's the main reason why I was hoping to do more research for this episode about rewatching these movies. And I have 2 kids and other issues going on, and I just could not get the time to sit down and watch all these werewolf movies like I normally like to do. But I just remember loving Ginger Snaps. It was one of those movies we watched together. And it was like, damn, this is really good. And it's one of the only few werewolf movies that I enjoyed. That, American Werewolf in London, and Monster Squad.
It has so much going on. There's a lot of layers. It's like an ogre, man. It has a lot of layers. That you got to peel back, or an onion, or a parfait. I don't know. I'm not going to go in and start quoting Shrek. But Ginger Snaps, American Werewolf in London, and Dog Soldiers. I love the Howling a lot, but I have a hard time. I don't know. American Werewolf in London is shot beautifully too.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier, the Howling, if these numbers are right, it was the first one to come out that year.
Yeah.
It had a budget of 1 million, and it actually grossed almost 18 million.
Yeah.
American Werewolf in London came out later that year in August. It had a budget of 10 million, and it grossed a little over 30.5 million. So
The Howling was the bigger film. That explains why the American Werewolf in London looks 10 times better than The Howling.
Yeah.
Joe Dante had 1/10 of the budget. Okay, well, that's interesting. I don't know. It's funny that we remember John Landis. He talked about it in a couple of interviews that he do these horror conventions. He was like, I only did 2 damn horror films. I had directed Animal House and Coming to America.
Blues Brothers, for God's sake.
Blues Brothers. But it's funny, Max Brooks, you date comedy, but you marry what, James?
Horror.
Yeah. Marry horror. Just for some odd reason that we as a culture,
I don't know, is it just my brain that I think of him as more, I am the one, I don't know. I don't view him as a horror director. I've always viewed him as a comedy director.
I view him as a comedy director too. American Werewolf in London is one of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Anything else we want to add to the werewolf?
I've mentioned it before in other shows, but I want to mention it one last time. If you love werewolf at all, and you also like satire and commentary on the human condition, you need to read Peter David's Howling Mad. Howling Mad is about a werewolf. So there's this pack of wolves hunting for food. One of the werewolves is carrying a litter of cubs, and the alpha of the pack, they smell something that smells off, and it's a werewolf. It doesn't smell human, nor does it smell. And they talk about how foul it smells and how it doesn't belong in the woods. And then it cuts to kind of the other side of the story where there's these hunters in the woods, and they're hunting what they think is just a large wolf. Well, it turns out to be a werewolf. And after it kills the humans, while it's distracted by the humans, the wolf pack tries to take it down because it doesn't belong in the woods. The werewolf bites the wolf, and instead of killing it, it pulls itself away. And then whenever there's a full moon, it turns into a human. And so it turns it on its ear. It does a lot of social commentary about what belongs in nature, what belongs where. It's Peter David, so there's a lot of humor in it as well. But it's a really well done story about what do we look for in nature, what do we look for in other places, as well as this odd sort of interesting romantic angle about, he encounters a woman and she becomes interested in him, but then she realized she's overly domesticated because he's still an animal, anytime he's not a human. And so it's a really interesting book. When we had Peter David on the show, he talked about it's been optioned for a film. Almost every time it comes available, somebody options it, and the film's never been made, which is a real shame because, the book itself, I think, came out in 1991 or late 80s even.
However, we still want Peter David to get that auction money.
Well, yeah, but I would love to see if you're looking, if you're a producer and for some reason listen to our show, hey, sponsor the hell out of us. But
And let us pitch you a movie or two.
But B, once you do that, you need to check out Howling Mad. How it's not been a movie or a limited series or a Netflix series or something yet is a real shocker in a time when we're really looking for content with all these different competing streaming issues. Peter David's stories they're human, they're witty, they're unique, and this one is it's one of my favorites just simply because it plays with the idea of, we know what happens in werewolf mythology when a man is bit, but what happens if it's a wolf that's bit and then is forced to deal with being human? So yeah, that's what I would like to recommend. Again, breaking away from movies a little bit. We looked at comics. We looked at a couple books. Check all of those out if you like werewolves.
Sounds good. It's been more serious.
And of course, we can't close this out without referencing the two most important forms of werewolves in music, both Werewolves of London by Warren Zevon and Clap for the Wolfman, which is not about Wolfman at all, but it mentions Wolfman. So we're going to count it because it does have Wolfman
Jack. That's right. This has been Bonehead Weekly. Share and subscribe.